All right. Welcome to the final installment in this series in this online COVID-19 emergency transition to online hybrid class 2020 epic disaster. Hey Colby. Epic human health and economic disaster. Hey Alyssa. So I'm involved in a couple of things since last week. A few things have changed for me while we're waiting for people to get here, I'll go ahead and fill you early birds, fill you guys in. I've been named a senior fellow at the Georgia Public Policy Foundation, so that's kind of a big deal. It gives me some street cred. I'll be advising the Georgia state government, both the legislators and the Georgia Assembly, plus the governor, on the economics of of the recovery from what we've created. Hey Tyler, and with this COVID response, and at this point, it doesn't really matter whether we overreacted or underreacted. We are where we are, and we can't change the past. Just so you know, and this filters into today's lecture, so I want to spend a second on this before we get going while people are showing up. There's the all the countries. The U.S. there you see on the left is we're bigger than Spain and Italy. So if you adjust those numbers, we're 5 times bigger than those countries. So you adjust their numbers, and they're just as bad as us. So it looks like we're worse off than Spain and Italy, but it's interesting that we're as bad as them. And I'm not sure if you look at the mortality rates. So they're much higher. So if you multiply that times 5, they're twice. Spain was twice as susceptible to this disease as we are, and Italy even worse. So we've actually had, relatively speaking, few deaths per capita. Per 100,000 citizens, we've had fewer deaths than Spain and Italy, but since we're so much bigger, we've got a larger absolute number. Working through the statistics of this is going to be important. Tyler, Andrew, Alyssa, Colby, the regular early risers, the people who get up before noon. I'm not going to lie to you, I slept in this morning. And so, as a senior fellow at the Georgia Public Policy Foundation, like I said, I'll be doing. I'm working on a piece right now that we're trying to submit tomorrow, getting ready for the legislative session coming up this summer. There's a lot of issues that we have to deal with, the economic consequences. So like I said, whether we've overreacted or underreacted, and you've got people who are opinionated on both sides, we have now suffered the early consequences of this public health threat with 55,000 deaths in the U.S. and more around the world. We've suffered that, and as we work our way towards summer and what will hopefully be a slowing, we can see the curve on the bottom right is starting to level off. Hopefully that'll start to work its way down, and when it goes back down substantially, then we can kind of get back into the groove. As long as it's up there, we're in the situation right now. Hopefully by the summer, this thing allows us to get back into the groove, get back into our jobs and everything. But we have now incurred the first stages of the economic consequences of this particular approach. In hindsight, so a couple of years from now, when all this is over, leveler heads will prevail. We will look at the data. We'll understand that countries are different. Why France and not Germany? There's why New York and not California? Why New York and not Boston? And I mean, you look over here. New York has had 17,000 deaths. 18. I mean, New York is bigger than Wayne, Michigan, but the numbers just aren't evenly distributed. You got all these New York and New Jersey numbers, and then Los Angeles only 916 deaths. So you got 916 deaths in Los Angeles, California, and you've got 17,000 deaths in New York City, and they're comparable. Los Angeles is bigger, and so is it the subway system? Well, if it is the subway system, then why not? Why not Boston? Right? Boston relies on public transportation just as much. So there's a lot of these questions has to be asked and answered, and it will be economists and health economists and healthcare professionals, and so we'll figure out how to better approach the next one, because what we don't want to do the next time, we want to find out what works and what doesn't. If we find out that sheltering in place did not really slow this thing, then we don't want to do that next time. If we find out that it did really help, if those areas that were better at sheltering in place escaped the mayhem of this disease, then maybe we do want to do that next time. So we got to figure those things out, and we won't know that until the data comes in, until we just kind of know everything. So in the meantime, we're now, a couple of months almost into this thing, at least a month and a half, since the shutdown in mid-March. So 5-6 weeks. And that's long enough to have made a substantial impact on the economy, and it's starting to really impact state economies, and which will eventually impact municipal economies. So we'll be doing a lot of advising on that through the Georgia Public Policy Foundation, and trying to do the research that will help them better navigate these waters over the next couple of years, because we're kind of in for it. I've been saying this all along, that we've only really been listening to public health officials and not economists, and now it's starting to be the time to listen to economists, and it's, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's not a lethal disease economy that we're looking at. But it is bad. What we've done to the economy, what we've done, even some of our responses out of Washington have actually done. They've compounded some problems. So we'll see how much that impacts us going forward. But that's some of the stuff that I'm doing now, and that does play into what we're talking about today. If you notice, the title of today's lecture is public goods, and it really should be private goods, public goods, common resource goods, and natural monopoly goods. It's all the different types of goods, and as it turns out, everybody's been talking a lot about, this thing will really only be over once we get a vaccine for it, and that could be anywhere up to 18 months, or it could be never. I mean, we never did come up with a vaccine for the AIDS virus, right? Now it's a retrovirus. It's a different type of virus, but coronaviruses are the same as the common cold, and they can be very difficult for a variety of reasons. They mutate pretty fast and that kind of stuff. Coronaviruses can be very difficult to vaccinate against. So hopefully this is one of those that we can, like influenza, that we can do vaccinations. But in general, things like polio vaccinations and other smallpox vaccinations, these things that we've battled pandemics before. We've done it with sound science and sound medical technology. But vaccinations are what we refer to as a public good, and so it's perfect timing to have this chapter, and it's going to be, I think it'll be an interesting lecture for you, to give you some really current, real good economics to help you dissect and understand the current state of the situation that we're in. So vaccinations are a public good in this sense. All semester long, I've talked about how great the free markets are, and how the free market is the best way to allocate scarce goods and services. Let the free market do it. Leave it alone in the market through the profit incentive and the information provided therein through the pricing mechanism. That will make sure that we get the optimal allocation of resources. I've given you some exceptions. We talked about externalities. We've talked about market power. We've talked about price controls and situations where the market gets distorted or the market fails to deliver on that promise. And so when I've said that the free markets are an efficient way to allocate scarce resources, um, I left out, I should have put an asterisk there and then referenced at the bottom a little footnote and said, oh yeah, by the way, we're talking strictly about private goods here. And that's an important caveat that I left out. So I want to run through that real quickly right now and let you know that private goods are things that you don't need help buying. Private goods are things that you can perfectly well handle on your own. And I don't mean because of the price. I mean, it's something that if you want it bad enough and it's a private good, you will figure out how to get it through begging, borrowing, or stealing. We don't want stealing, but begging and borrowing, or just saving up money and buying it, or borrowing money and buying it. I mean, no one can afford a house, right? No one has $100,000 lying around to buy a house, yet everybody buys a house. How do they do it? Well, they go out and they finance it. They borrow the money. They save up for a down payment. They go out and they beg, borrow, and steal for a down payment. They get the down payment, and then they go out and they finance the house. So that's because houses are private goods. So private goods have that ability to work in the free market setting. So all semester long, I should have been saying when I'm touting the virtues and the benefits of the free market, I should have been saying, oh yeah, by the way, I'm talking only about private goods here because there's other types of goods. There are some goods that you don't wake up in the morning and go, I think I want to go shopping for some vaccinations today. You've never really woken up and said that, I bet. Yeah, I think today would be a good day to go shopping for a vaccination. I'm going to go to Vaccinations R Us. I don't know, maybe I'll go to Belk's and see if they have any vaccines on sale today on Black Friday after Thanksgiving. I'm going to go shopping for vaccines. That's a good time to get vaccines because that's the flu season starting. You don't want to get the coronavirus. So you don't do that. And there's a reason you don't ever say that. And that's because vaccines are not a private good. So the market doesn't really work very well for vaccinations. Because how do vaccines work? Vaccines work by a bunch of people going out and getting a needle stuck in them and injected with some nasty stuff that you would never voluntarily inject into yourself. Maybe it's been a denatured protein from a virus or something, and someone said, hey, you want to inject denatured proteins of viruses into your body? Let's go do that. That'll be fun. And you'll say, like, why? Do you get high doing that? Like, no, it'll just make your arm sore. Oh, and by the way, you might actually catch the virus from it and die. Or you might actually get an infection at the site of the needle injection. Or if we share needles, we might swap communicable diseases, and you could catch a deadly disease that way. If we're not clean and practice safe injecting. And so you're like, yeah, so what's the benefit exactly of me getting this vaccination? Oh, well, the benefit is kind of to society. It's a public good. It will allow us to all get back to work. But we need immunity from this coronavirus, or we need immunity from smallpox, or we need immunity from polio. We need a herd immunity. Everybody has to do this as a collective so that we're all safer. But I just said, but you're saying if I get this shot, I could die. And you're like, yeah, it could kill you. And it's definitely going to make my arm sore. Yeah, you're not going to be able to go to the gym for a couple of days because it's going to make your arm kind of really sore. So your workouts are going to suffer. And I could die. Yeah, you could die from it. I could catch the disease from the thing. And in some cases, people actually catch the disease. In some cases, it just doesn't work for you. But so you go through all that for nothing. But it's better for the group if we all just go get it. Well, I'm going to be thinking this. I'm thinking, oh, I'm a smart guy. I can figure this out. Wait a second. What if everybody else gets the vaccination? A few of them die from it. And most of them, though, get an immunity against polio or smallpox or coronavirus. And now that everybody in the world is immune against it except for me, there's no way I can catch it. And if I don't get the shot and everybody else does, then I don't get the disease and I don't die from the shot. I think my best strategy is to be a free rider here. I think I should let everybody else get it and get the vaccination, and I should just hide until this is over and then come out, and I will be a winner. I will win. Now, what if everybody thinks like me on that? What if everybody has that same attitude and we all pretend to go out and get the vaccination, but none of us take it? We actually don't. We say, hey, I'll take the needle home and I'll inject it into myself. And they're like, okay, good. Just as long as you do it. I got this. and then you go home and you throw it away. You squirt it out into the garbage can, you throw it away, and you don't actually inject it into yourself. What if everybody does that? Well, then we all die from the coronavirus. So there's a private incentive, there's a personal individual incentive to not go along with the herd, to be a loner, and to let everybody else get the injection, let them bear the consequences and the side effects of those treatments, and then you get away with it. So as a result, if we leave this up to, that's why you don't wake up in the morning and say, hey, I'm going to go get that vaccination because I want a small chance of dying from a shot in the arm. Yeah, sounds like a good plan. No one does that. As a result, nobody gets vaccinated. The market just won't do that. No one's, Macy's and Belk, Dillard's, they're not going to sell vaccinations because nobody's going to buy them. They're just going to free ride on everybody else. So what do we do? Well, we're going to have to force everybody to get these vaccinations. Now, they don't, with the influenza, since it's not, since influenza is only deadly for some people, we've kind of allowed people not to get the influenza vaccination every year if they don't want to. We've made that voluntary. But most people are kind of like, okay, the side effects are minimal. The benefits of not getting the flu are pretty good. And really, I get the flu shot because I don't want to get the flu. But really, the reason that I should get the flu shot from a socially optimal perspective, social optimality perspective, the reason I should get the flu shot is so that I don't spread it to my parents, or I don't spread it to elderly people in nursing homes who have about an 8 to 10% mortality rate associated with getting influenza. So really, it's other people that benefit from me getting the vaccination. And what does that do? That creates an externality. Someone else is receiving the benefit of my activity. We're going to tend to underdo it. So actually, not as many people actually get the flu shot as should. But we've just kind of not ever pushed that one. But when it came to smallpox and polio, those were just dreaded diseases. I mean, smallpox just killed you, and it was a painful, horrible death. Polio crippled you, made you, it was a painful, crippling disease that left lifelong, disabilities with people, and it attacked children. So these were just horrendous diseases that if we didn't make everybody take that vaccination, then we were screwed. So for a long time, it just became public policy that when you were born, you had to get a smallpox vaccination and a polio vaccination. And there's a bunch that we require whenever you started school. Since everybody has to go to school, we've made it a law that you cannot attend school and be among other children if you don't have those vaccinations. Now, after a certain amount of time, we eradicated those viruses from the planet for the most part. There's a few pockets here and there, but for the most part, they're controlled and they're eradicated, and we have other treatments. So we don't have to force people to get the vaccination anymore. I was the last generation that had to get the smallpox vaccination. When I was born, late 60s, it was still required in most hospitals up until about 67 or so, mid to late 60s. It was required in all hospitals that you get this shot in your arm, and it leaves a little scar. You'll see older people have a scar right there in their arm. Everybody has one, and that's the smallpox vaccination. I think it's smallpox, maybe polio. I think it's smallpox though. Hold on. Got some camera issues here. There we go. So my sister is 2 years older than me, and she has a scar on her arm right there because when we were born in the same hospital. When she was born, she had to get that vaccination. But 2 years later, when I was born, they'd stopped requiring it. So I don't have that scar on my arm, the smallpox vaccination. But if you see anybody who's older than 45 or 50, a lot of them anybody over 50 is pretty much going to have that vaccination. So what you're trying to do there with public goods is you want the benefits, the social benefits of something, but the free market's not going to provide it. So for all public goods, we tend to let the government push those on us. We let the government fund those things, and in some cases force us all to buy those things. So the question is, what is the difference between an iPhone, a coffee mug, a vaccine, fireworks, doctor's visits, plumber calls to your house, plumber services, streaming services, what I'm doing now, educational services. What's the difference between all those and vaccinations or fireworks? I mean, I mentioned fireworks already, or national defense, security, those kind of things. What's the difference between all of these goods and services? And it turns out there's a couple of criteria that you need to assess to figure out if something goes into the private good bucket, where we say let the private market do it, or whether it goes into the public good bucket. And then it's like, okay, now we need to bring in the government. So this is a justification, one of the few justifications where we should have strong government involvement in the markets, because if we don't bring the government into this thing, we will either not buy something that we should be doing, or we will refuse to do something that's good for the community, right? And even us ultimately. So let me show you what those criteria are, and that'll be the bulk of this lesson. Where's my thing? What do? I do this. Doink. Okay. I know this sucks, but I'm gonna have to use my stupid thing here. Private goods. Hey, I did that pretty good. Private goods. What are the characteristics that make a good a private good? So I want to be clear about this, because it's important that you get this subtle point. Goods either possess these characteristics or they don't. Okay, that's the lesson here. Just because we say that something is a public good or a private good doesn't make it that. Being a private good is like being green, right? Or blue. Let's use blue, like my shirt. Being a private good is like being blue. I could tell you that this shirt is red, but that doesn't make it red. It's inherently blue. There are certain, physical characteristics of this material that make it blue. Private goods, there are certain qualities about a particular good, like an iPhone, that's inherent in this good that make it a private good. Even if the government gave us all iPhones just as a public policy, if we voted on that and then it was provided as a public good to everybody, it's still a private good. It's just because I say this is red doesn't mean it's red. It's blue. And just because I say this is a public good doesn't mean it's a public good. And that's important because there's a few things that we do that with. And you'll see what I mean when I start defining these things. For as a general rule in this country, everybody thinks that K through 12 education is a public good because the government funds it. It actually is a private good, and we've chosen to allocate it as a public good, and there ends up being a problem with that. Remember, the lesson is this: if a good is a private good, the market is the most efficient way to allocate it. If a good is a public good, then strong government involvement is necessary. If you made iPhones a public good and had the government responsible for producing and selling iPhones, there would be a lot of distortions in that market, and we would be worse off, not better off. And we've actually seen that in K through 12 education. One of the fundamental problems we've been unable to fix with public education, K through 12 public education, is we've never addressed the underlying problem that we're providing a private good as a public good. There have been efforts to do that. We've danced around that problem, and we've dabbled in privatizing education at the K through 12 level with things like charter schools, and we have a parallel system of private schools that run alongside the public school system. And in some cases, that just makes things worse instead of better. But we've never fully committed to saying, okay, wait a second, everybody, we're lying to ourselves here. We're trying to pretend that something is a public good when it's a private good. Now, that doesn't mean that there's no room for government involvement in K through 12 education. There actually is, but for a different reason that I'll discuss later. And when we understand what that other reason is, then the solution becomes obvious. How to fix it. Stop lying to ourselves and saying it's a public good. Call it what it is, a private good. And then because it has a different unrelated problem, fix that different unrelated problem, and then you don't have to worry about it. What we've done is we've misdiagnosed that problem. Because there are problems with education, we assume that the best solution is to let the government do it, and that's actually kind of a bad choice that we've done. That doesn't mean the government shouldn't be involved, though. It's just we're using the government. The government is a tool that we're using the wrong way. The problem is that we have a screw that needs to be screwed in, and we're using the government's a tool to like a screwdriver to use that. But instead of that, we're trying to use the tool backwards and hammer with the prop here. Instead of screwing that screw in, using the government appropriately to achieve this task, we're like doing this. We're like, why isn't this working? Why isn't it twinkling? Oh man, geez, it's just not working. So that's an analogy there for you, if that helped or not. So what are these characteristics that define something as a private good? Well, it's very simple. There's two characteristics. Now the words might be new to you, and the concepts might be a little bit sketchy at first, but you'll see they're pretty straightforward. Private goods have two fundamental characteristics. Private goods are always goods that are excludable and rival. It's painful, isn't it, watching me write with a mouse? Private goods are goods that have two characteristics everywhere and always. They are excludable and rival. So let's define what excludable and rival are, and then all you have to do is think about any particular good, and if it possesses those two qualities, it's a private good. Let the market do it. Now we'll worry about other problems like externalities and all that kind of stuff that we've talked about, or market power, monopolies, all those distortions, price ceilings and price floors. We can talk about those later. But let's just get this fundamental thing down first. We got two buckets. We got the government bucket of things that the government's going to be involved in, and then we've got the private sector. We're going to put all the private goods in there and put all the public goods over here as a kind of a crude. Now that we're going to have to do a little bit of shuffling and play around with some things, but that's going to be the main rule here. And it's going to be these two characteristics that we judge. It's just like looking at peaches, and we're going to put the big juicy ones over here and the rotten old ones over there. So, ooh, big juicy, put it over there. Ooh, rotten old, put it over there. So if it has these two characteristics, put it here. If it doesn't, we put it over there. What is excludable? Excludable simply means that it's very easy to set up a mechanism by which if you don't pay for it, you don't get it. Think about how they do that at stores. How do they prevent you from just stealing stuff from stores? It's very easy. What they do is they control at Best Buy and at Walmart. They control where you come in and where you go out, right? If you couldn't build a building around something, it'd be very difficult to keep goods excludable because you could just kind of walk in from any angle and grab something and run and they couldn't get you. But since we can build buildings, it's very easy to put iPhones in a building with a single door that you have to come into and go out of. You can put these iPhones in the back room, put little wires on all the others, attach a wire to them and an alarm system so that if you try to steal it, it sets off an alarm. That's very easy to do with iPhones. It's very easy to do with everything at Best Buy. So everything that you can buy in Best Buy is a private good. It's excludable because you can easily set up a system by which if you don't pay for it, you don't get it. You put cash registers in the front. So if you try to walk out holding a big screen TV and they're saying, hey, what you doing, buddy? It's like, oh, I'm just going to take this. It's like, no, you can't do that without paying. And will stop me. And they got a big dude standing there. Guess what he's going to do? He'll stop your ass. He'll just, boom, tackle you. So it's very easy to just put a big guy at the front of the store. And we all kind of get the routine, so we just kind of go along with it. They don't even have to put the big guy at the front of the store all the time because we're kind of cool with this. We understand that that's the way that you buy things. So that's just an inherent characteristic of private goods, is that it's very easy to set up a mechanism by which if people don't pay for it, you don't get it. So let's think about other things for a second. Electricity. Is it excludable or not? Well, what happens if you don't pay your power bill? What will happen? You guys know the answer to that. If you don't pay your power bill for a month or two, if you miss a bill, you'll get a couple nasty letters. And this is very excludable. They can keep you from using electricity very easily. All they do now is they throw a switch and what happens? Your electricity goes off, right? If you don't pay, you don't get it. That's a very easy mechanism. It's just a switch. A switch means that electricity is, by definition, excludable. What about college, higher education? If you don't pay your tuition, do you get credit? Nope, that's very easy. College credits are excludable because we control the college credits through the transcript mechanism. And if you don't, that's the mechanism that we make this excludable. And your transcript is your official record. And if you don't pay your tuition, then you don't get credit for the class. We kick you out. So that's very easy. So education as a service is excludable. Doctor's visits. If you go to the doctor and you say, I have no way of paying you, and they'll say, okay, well, go to another doctor then. They just won't give you the services. So medical services are excludable. So excludability it's a necessary condition for private goods, but it's not sufficient. There's one other condition that we need for it to be a private good, and that's this rival thing. But I think you should see that excludable. And I think it will help if I give you an example of something that's not excludable. First, here's another one: cable TV. If you don't pay your cable TV bill, boom, they'll shut it off. They'll cancel you. So that's excludable. So that doesn't mean cable TV is a private good. It just means that it has that excludable characteristic. That's the first one. There's got to be one more to be a private good. Yeah, knock yourself out, John. Yeah, I mean, I would have never known. I would have never known if you just tuned out. I know everybody else is asleep, John, so you're fine. Nice of you to ask. But do I have the ability and or right to even say no to that? What if no, you cannot. I refuse. You must sit there and not use the restroom. I don't think I have the ability to prevent you from doing that. Do professors do that? If you're in class and the professor said, and you say, I need to use the restroom to the professor, raise your hand. I need to use the restroom. Does the professor say, no, no, you can't do that? I don't know if you have the right to do that. All right. So, what are some goods that are non-excludable? Have you ever gone to a 4th of July celebration? And they're doing fireworks, one of those big fireworks displays. Big, huge, all that kind of stuff. And I mean the big ones, not just like the ones that you buy at the store and do everybody just goes crazy with around New Year's and stuff, but the real big, industrial fireworks displays. Those, think about that. Whether or not you pay for that fireworks display, if they do it, there's no way to exclude people from looking at it, right? You can sit in your house and look out the window and you see it. And so there's no way for them to say, oh, there's no mechanism by which they can come over and like put a big tent over your house and say, there's no practical way where they can say, hey, look, unless you pay us to remove this tent, you can't see the fireworks display, right? That's impractical. So there's no practical way to exclude people from looking at the fireworks display. So by definition, a fireworks display is non-excludable. All right. Therefore, the big, huge industrial fireworks displays, the big commercial, big ones, those are not actually private goods by definition because they miss on one of those criteria. National defense is another. National defense is a service provided by our government that keeps us safe. But whether or not you pay taxes, whether or not you contribute to the cause, once we've decided to provide national defense, you are safer because of that national defense, whether you paid or not. So it's non-excludable. You can't say, all right, everybody who paid taxes gets to benefit from the national defense, but everybody else is subject to terrorism and invasion from a foreign country, but not all the people who paid, right? And no, we're all in this boat together. Once it's provided, everybody gets it, whether you paid or not. So it's non-excludable for that reason. I think that should make pretty good sense. All right, what's the second characteristic of a private good? It is rival. This one's a little more subtle, but it's a characteristic that goods either possess or they don't. And so examples will help clear it up, but here's the formal definition. A good is rival if when you consume some of that good, when you purchase some of that good, there's less of it for other people. It's really, rival just means kind of scarce. It's scarce. It implies scarcity, but it's a little slightly more nuanced. It means if you consume some of that good, then there's less of it to go around for everybody else. And I think the formal definition is that when you consume some of that good, it diminishes the stock of that good for others. That's the formal definition. It just means there's less of it for others. So let's think about that. Have you ever gone to a restaurant and they got like a really awesome bacon wrapped shrimp special with a steak on the side and mashed potatoes and gravy and cake? And it's like a special, and it's like Tuesday night special at the Shrimp and Steak and Bacon House, and you want to go get your shrimp, your bacon wrapped shrimp and your steak and your potato and your cake, and you go there and you're all stoked, but you were kind of busy at work, so you got there a little late, and it's like 8 o'clock before you sit down, and you go to the waitress like, hey, I want the Tuesday special, and the waitress comes up to you and she goes, sorry, Greg, we've sold out. Well, that's because steak and bacon wrapped shrimp are rival. When other people bought them, there was fewer left, and I didn't get one eventually. So things can run out. Rival means that things can run out. That's not true of every good. Most goods, iPhones, what happens when the new iPhone comes out? You go down to get the new iPhone and they say, hey, yeah, you want a new iPhone 11? Guess what? They're all sold out. So if it can be sold out, it's rival. Some goods aren't like that. Do they ever sell out of cable TV? Do they sell out of HBO? If you go down to Cox Cable and you say, "Hey, I want to buy HBO," they go, "Oh, you know what? We ran out. We ran out of HBOs to sell you." Now, how the hell do you run out of HBOs? That would be ridiculous, right? You can't run out of HBOs. You can't run out of cable TV. Back to those industrial or commercial fireworks displays, those big fireworks displays. When I look at a fireworks display, is there less fireworks for you to see? Does that consume some of those fireworks and they get dimmer for everyone else? And that if enough people watch the fireworks, then there'll just be no more fireworks? No, there's no end to how many people can enjoy a fireworks display. It's non-rival. So some goods are rival. Coffee mugs. You can run out of coffee mugs. I'm about to run out. I keep breaking things. I break wine glasses and coffee mugs, and so I have to keep buying them because I run out. If you can run out of something, then it's rival. So if a good is both rival and excludable, if it's kind of an odd combination, but if those two characteristics are true of a good, then it is by definition a private good, and let the free market do it. So now let's mix this up a little bit. Let's talk about goods that violate one or both of these criteria. First, both. If a good is non-excludable and non-rival, what does that mean? Well, it means we don't have a private good anymore, and it means we have a special case. And notice, a good can be excludable or rival, private good. It can be non-excludable and non-rival, and that's going to make it a public good. It could be non-excludable but rival, and that'll make it a common resource good. Or it could be excludable but non-rival. You see, there's four possibilities of combinations there. And if it's excludable and non-rival, then it's going to be a natural monopoly good. Now, as it turns out, anything that's not a private good is going to be problematic. The market is going to have a distortion or a failure, and it's not going to be efficient in allocating those things. So just on that last one, I said it's a natural monopoly good. We've already talked about monopolies being inefficient, right? Monopolies have inherent inefficiencies, and that's because ultimately what monopolies are selling is not a private good. It's a natural monopoly good. So it just so happens that some firms, kind of by choice or accident, selected to sell you a natural monopoly good, and through no fault of their own became a monopoly and then created distortions. Notice, if that's the case, we talked about a solution for that. You can bring in the government to help alleviate that distortion. So in all cases where you have something other than a private good, all those three other options, those are justifications for some government involvement in the markets, because otherwise the market failures will create inefficiencies. So we can offset those inefficiencies with government action. We want to do it smartly, but there's good and bad government action, as we've seen recently. But this will be that'll be the final lesson when we get to it. So if it's non-excludable and non-rival, that just means that whether you pay for it or not, you get benefits from it. If it's non-rival, that means that there are plenty of benefits to go around. So just kind of chew on those two for a second. And if something is both non-excludable and non-rival, then if you don't pay for it, you can still use it, and it has a lot of value to a lot of people that never diminishes. Well, there's a lot of value to go around, but there's no way for the market to really allocate it because it's non-excludable. So the market needs that excludability to ration things, to allocate them. So the problem with that is that things that are non-excludable and non-rival they're never going to be produced by the market, because if you don't have to pay for it and you still get it, guess what the best strategy is? It's the vaccination, right? Nobody wants to buy it on their own. If we still get the immunity with and I don't have to do it personally, then I want a free ride on that problem. So the problem with this is it's the free rider problem. If you're going to provide something, then it's non-rival, then people are going to abuse it. And if everybody abuses that system, then it'll never get provided. So what do? By definition, these are called public goods, and we bring in the government to fund those things. Now, just because I said the government should fund these things does not mean that the government should produce these things. And this is a problem that we've gotten ourselves into in this country and around the world, where people have completely forgotten what governments are for and what businesses are for. And it's very simple. Businesses are there by public consent to produce goods and services for us, in particular, all goods and services, except for a couple. Governments are there to provide leadership and government services, right? They're there for specific reasons. They're there to legislate, adjudicate, and to carry out the executive functions of the government. There's three things that governments typically do, and that's why we built the Constitution in this country the way we did. And there are very limited powers that we give them. Everything else is private industry. So there are a few services like legal services, like adjudication, the judicial branch, protecting your civil liberties. There's things like that we put on the government to actually do for us. And then there's also things like public goods that we want the government to fund. We want them to pay for it. But notice that breakdown. I never said that governments were not created to produce goods and services. They're really bad at it. Governments don't know how to make goods and services very well. They can do it. You can put a group of people together and say, hey, make screwdrivers. And okay. And they can sit there and they can go out. Hell, you can make a screwdriver out. You could whittle it out of wood. It would just suck. It wouldn't be very good. So anybody can do these things, but you really want private industry and the forces of competition and the profit incentive to force companies like Craftsman to make really high quality products at affordable prices. And it's that profit motivation that drives this screwdriver to being an effective, good, high quality, and affordable thing. We don't see that with governments. What we end up with when you let governments produce goods and services, pretend like they're a factory or a firm, they don't have that profit incentive, so they don't get to keep the change, right? They just work on a weird budgeting process where if you don't spend it, you lose it. So the incentives are perverse. They're all backwards. And the incentive is to get bigger and bigger and more bloated, but not necessarily to get more efficient. So you end up with inefficiencies when the government tries to produce goods and services. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't have the government fund these things. We do want the government to fund public goods, but we don't always want them to produce that good or service. Some things the government does well, military services, things like that, they can produce those services, and there's a few things for specific reasons they do pretty well, but that doesn't mean that they do everything well. Just like Ford Motor Company is not good at making ventilators. They're trying, but they're not very good at it. That's why we're not getting any ventilators. I mean, Ford Motor Company, guess what they're good at? They're good at making trucks. That's what they do, and some cars. Not all of them, but some cars. But they're specialized. They're not good at making eyeglasses or iPhones. I mean, if we had Ford's, hey Ford, we want you to make iPhones for us, it would suck. So we don't want that. So So a public good, if we don't, if we let the market try to allocate public goods, no firm cannot make money doing it, so it won't be provided. So what do? We have the government fund public goods. Um, so it turns out that fireworks are public good. Fireworks are non-excludable. They're also non-rival. I explained that earlier. They're non-excludable because you can't prevent people from watching it. And once you do the fireworks, you can't prevent people from seeing them. And secondly, um, they're rival in that when I look at the fireworks display, it doesn't get dimmer for everybody else. It doesn't diminish it for other people. So fireworks displays, the big ones, are by definition a public good. And no one's going to make money doing a fireworks display. If I said, hey, I'm going to do a fireworks display, everybody send me money. People are going to like, yeah, I'm not going to send you money, but I'll watch, right? And then I don't get any money, so I can't do it. So the private market, the private industry just can't provide that. Even though we love to see fireworks displays, it's never going to work. So what do? We get the government to collect taxes to buy the fireworks for us and to hire the people to put on the fireworks shows. Now, the government doesn't make the fireworks. The government doesn't set up the pyrotechnics and the music and the sound system, all that stuff. The government just funds it. And then we reap the benefits of enjoying that fireworks display, as long as you like fireworks displays, I guess. And so who puts on these? It's always cities and states and the federal government, the military, that actually fund these things and organize that activity, because the private market just fails to do it. All right, that's an example of a public good. National defense, same thing. National defense, not only do we have the federal government fund it, but in many cases they provide those services through the military branches. But notice one thing, they don't do all of it, right? They let Northrop Grumman make jets for them. They allow private contractors, the private industry, to actually make the guns and the bullets and all the stuff and the uniforms and that kind of stuff. They don't produce those. They just organize the activity. So most of the expenses after paying the soldiers is all privatized. And it's only the actual organization and payment of the soldiers and those military services that are produced by the government. And that's an easy enough activity that doesn't require that you understand how to build a stealth fighter, right? The governments would not know how to do that necessarily. We let private industry develop those things, and they compete vigorously for those contracts. Okay, those are public goods. What if a good is non-excludable but rival? A non-excludable but rival good is going to be problematic, because if it's non-excludable, you can't prevent people from using it. But if it's rival, when people use it, it diminishes it for other people, and we run out. That can be problematic. The American buffalo, gorgeous beast, but they were free-ranging, and if you wanted to kill a buffalo to eat it, you just went and killed it. You took a buffalo. But that meant there were fewer buffaloes for other people. So there was nothing to prevent Native Americans and Western settlers from killing the buffalo. They were just free-ranging. And the more people did that, the fewer and fewer buffalo there were. And this happened in Europe. The European bison is extinct. We drove it extinct. And buffaloes diminished to the point of near extinction. And we had to come in and repopulate them, because if we just left it alone, if we didn't bring in the government, then we would have run out of buffaloes. Same thing for we've done that with bison. Carrier pigeons. Carrier pigeons were something that we drove extinct, because it was something that people, I guess, could eat, and it was rival and non-excludable. You just went out and grabbed them, and I guess they were stupid birds. Anyway, so those are examples of what we call common resource goods. And the problem with common resource goods is not the free riding problem that we saw with public goods. The problem with common resource goods is that ultimately they suffer from this thing called the tragedy of the commons. So there used to be in old time cities out west, you would have these common grazing lands, where the grasslands, and all the farmers would bring their cows there to graze and eat the grass. So it was a common resource, but everybody could use it for free, so they all used it, and that destroyed all the grass, and we ended up with erosion and the Dust Bowl catastrophe where all the grass was kind of there for a reason, and when we took it away, all the topsoil got blown away and the grass couldn't regrow, and we ended up with deserts, and that was the big Dust Bowl crisis, big dust storms and all kinds of calamities. So common resource goods, they suffer from tragedy of the commons in that we use them up, and if it's an animal, it goes extinct, and if it's not, then if it's lands, then we destroy them or we use them up. So anything like that is problematic. It's funny because a cow is pretty much the same thing as a buffalo, but we fixed the problem. We didn't let cows just kind of run around and everybody just kill them. What we did with cows, separate from other animals that suffered from the tragedy of the commons, is we simply set up a system by which cows could be owned. Here's the problem with species that become endangered. When we do overharvest a species and it diminishes in numbers, like the buffalo did, the government will typically step in and say, okay, we're about to lose this species, let's protect it. Well, that's problematic because you haven't addressed the problem. The problem is these things are free-ranging and there's no private ownership of these things. The only difference between a buffalo and a cow is that you can own a cow, but you couldn't own a buffalo. And if you own a cow, are you going to let poachers take them? No, you're going to stand with a gun and shoot the poachers if they try to steal your cows. You're going to brand your cows so people know if they see a cow that you're not selling, then they stole it from you. And you put razor wire around your grazing lands, and then you protect your cows and you nurture your cows. And you don't just kill all your cows on the first day to make money. What do? Well, you make sure you nurture the herd. You make sure that the herd is stable over time so that you can harvest cows at a certain point when they're ready. And then the rest you can breed and make new baby cows with. I guess they're called calves. And then you'll always have a healthy herd. So you never run out of cows. There's like 30 million head of cattle in this country. There's always been 30 million cows in this country. We just keep making new ones. But buffaloes went down dramatically. We had the same problem with alligators. Alligators were a common resource. They have valuable skin that you can make into belts and purses and shoes. And I guess you can make hats out of them or shirts if you want to. That'd be kind of an uncomfortable shirt. But anyway, alligators were a thing that were a common resource good. And we used to just be able to kill them. But as people killed more and more southern alligators, the populations diminished, and to the point that they almost became endangered. The government stepped in, and for a while they tried to protect them. And all that happened was the numbers diminished because poachers were still going out and killing them. So you can't protect alligators. You can't hire a bunch of alligator bodyguards to go out there and protect alligators. It doesn't work. So just making penalties against killing alligators, all that did was it made a lot of people not hunt alligators, but a few poachers then realized that alligator skins became more valuable. As the supply of alligator skins on the market diminished because of these laws, the price of alligator skins skyrocketed. Well, that just created a huge incentive to go out and poach alligators. So people were illegally poaching alligators and on the black market selling the things. And what happens? No one's protecting them effectively, and the numbers diminish. All we had to do to protect the alligators was allow people to own them. We had to get rid of the restrictions on owning alligators. And why would that be a typical kind of moronic response? People said, well, if you own an alligator, you can kill it. There's too few alligators, so don't let people have alligators, because if they can own them, they'll kill them and they'll harvest the hide. Well, that's the same thing with cows. That you don't kill them all, you breed them. So it's really, really moronic that people don't understand that, and they try to protect these things, and they create an incentive to poach them, and then we run out. They go extinct. So you got to be really careful with what you try to protect. Sometimes the best way to protect it is to let people own it, let them breed them, let them harvest the meat and the fur or the skin, and do all the stuff we're going to do with those things, and then at least then we don't lose the alligator, right? So once we allowed the private ownership of alligators, alligator farms and alligator farming and hunting, and we regulated all that, and we made sure that it was still legal to take them. Now the problem is there's too many damn alligators, and they're eating dogs in Florida. So you got to be careful also about protecting alligators, because they're kind of dangerous. Anyway, That's a common resource good. Finally, if a good is excludable but non-rival, that means there's a lot of value to go around, but you can easily set up a mechanism by which if people don't pay for it, they don't get it. So the free market can allocate these, just not efficiently. And what a excludable and non-rival good is a natural monopoly good. Cable TV is a good example. Cable TV is excludable. If you don't pay your bill, you don't get it. But it's also, it's excludable, but it's non-rival in that if I consume ESPN, it doesn't turn off for you. You don't run out of ESPN or HBO. So cable TV is a natural monopoly good, and the problem there is that you get the inefficiencies of holding back quantities and raising prices above a natural market price, and that creates inefficiencies. So what do we do with that? Well, we can regulate the pricing like we do with a lot of monopolies, or we can do public ownership. There's a lot of different cures we talked about in the monopoly chapter, and those all come into play. And that's pretty much everything for natural monopoly goods, common goods, public goods, and private goods. So that's everything. Real quickly, if you're tuning into this later, watching the VOD, or you're watching now, it may have occurred to you that I have not put your tests up on D2L yet. And I've done that for a very good reason. It's because I haven't graded the tests yet. And I'm going to do that today and get those tests up there. And you'll have your test scores from the last one. At some point later this week, I will go ahead and put the final exam up. We'll do it the same way. So be prepared to take the final exam. The final exam will have some questions from all the chapters, but just a few. And so you have to go back and find those in the book or online or whatever and study that stuff. Learn those old things. Make sure you understand those concepts. That's important. That's what you're doing here is you're learning. And then also there'll be some questions on chapters 10 and 11. Most of it will focus on 10 and 11. I'm going to have another thing in there. I give you probably you know what? I'll just do multiple choice. It's 40% of your grade, so take some time with it. It'll probably only be about 30 questions. So each question will, it's a 200-point test relative to the others. So each question is going to be worth quite a bit of points, like 6.66 points. How's that work for you guys? You got any questions? Didn't have a lot of people. If you don't require people to attend, guess what they do? They don't attend. But hey, I appreciate you guys showing up and being here. I'll talk to 3 people. On my other stream, I had 1,344 people in my astronomy stream this week. 1,344 people watching me do an astronomy stream, and I was kind of like, yeah, that's a few more than normal. That stream is kind of growing, so I'm sitting here in the same setup, talking to you guys, talking to those knuckleheads about astronomy, and we were doing all kinds of fun stuff on that other stream. But it's more fun because it's not my day job, so I don't have to be professional. I can be unprofessional in that job, or not job, in that hobby. So anyway, that was fun. It's if I have 100 or 200 people in a session when I'm doing a Twitch stream on astronomy, I'm very comfortable with that. It's hard to actually. I know there's only a few people here watching this right now, and other people will catch it later on the video on demand. But it's awkward to teach to a few people, and it's awkward to teach to a bunch of people. But in between is pretty good. But that was something. I got a little nervous. I'm not gonna lie to you, talking to 1,344 people. I don't know how big that's gonna get, but if it gets any bigger than that, it's gonna get silly. Anyway, I'll get those tests graded and up there. I'm sure you guys did fine. I'm not worried about that. Since it was a take-home exam, I'm sure you guys got that. I hope that you guys have learned a lot in this class. It's been a challenging semester. It looks like everybody kind of got through it fine. I think your grades are going to be okay. And I'll get that other test posted. I don't know what the official date is. When I post the test, you should have. I'll give you plenty of time. It'll only take you a short time to take that exam. There's no time limit, but once I put it up, I'll give you a couple days to finish it. And that should be the end of this week. I think the end of this week, maybe the beginning of next week, is the official end of the semester. I'll double check that, but I'll give you time. The papers are due the last if you do the extra credit paper, you want to do that, just I'll make a submission folder for that too. So there'll be a submission folder for the paper, be a submission folder for the final exam. We'll do it the same way, and everything will be due by the official end of the semester. Let me go ahead and just let me get the dates for you right now, so I'll have it on the video. Is that, no, hold on. MGSU academic calendar. Full session. Ooh, watch this. Okay. I don't really need the library behind me. Full session is the second column here. Doing. Grades due May 7th. So final exams are due May 5th. So technically your papers are due on May 5th, right? I'll give you till May 5th to do your paper. I will probably make that final exam due May 1st. Now I'll make your final exam due May 3rd. Your final exam will be due May 3rd, and your paper will be due May 5th. Okay? So that works. I take it you have no questions. You guys don't really have any questions usually. That's fine. If you do, email me at my mga.edu, greg.george@mga.edu. Your final exam, I'll get that posted later this week. It'll be due probably by Wednesday. I'll get that posted. I'll get your other tests graded and posted today or tomorrow, but you'll get those, and then I will get you your papers. So your exam will be due the 3rd, and your papers will be due the 5th. And then I'll get your final grade submitted by the 7th. Okay, that's good. We're good here. If you have any questions, let me know. And it's been fun. Sorry for the pandemic. And I we did what we could here to get things up and running online, and I hope this sufficed. But like I said, you got the same tests, you got the same lectures, you got everything online that you would have gotten in class. You just didn't have anybody sneezing on you or coughing on you. So I think it worked out for the best. All right, guys, I'll catch you later. Be good.